I began the research that informed this book by asking questions that a person from any resource-rich developing country is bound to ask. What is the reason for the underperformance of the Nigerian economy despite its vast endowments? What role does Nigeria's resources, especially its oil wealth, play in this economic underperformance? How do power, politics, and decision-making affect this economic development challenge? This book is the result of that decade-long inquiry into these questions. In it, I identify Nigeria's central economic development challenge as the struggle or inability to diversify its economy. The economy is characterized by irregular growth episodes, it is highly dependent on revenues from crude oil exports, and it has severe regional disparities. And politics plays an important role in the policy choices that have created and exacerbated this challenge of economic diversification. The reason why Nigeria's economy is still dependent on oil exports and has not achieved sustained economic transformation can be found at the intersection of its politics and policy making, specifically due to an unstable political settlement or an unstable distribution of political power. Nigeria's leaders are in a perpetual state of crisis management. In this constant state of crisis management, economic policy focus is oriented towards macroeconomic stabilization, the restoration of growth, and selective public sector reforms, or easy fix reforms. There's hardly ever a systematic long-term orientation necessary to drive structural transformation to diversify the economy. This dynamic has occurred throughout Nigeria's history, regardless of the type of government, whether military rulers or elected politicians. Meaningful policy reforms in Nigeria, when they do happen, are focused on crisis management rather than consistently focused on economic diversification. So during periods of relative political stability within the political settlement, meaningful policy reforms and national projects are actually implemented, and for that reason the economy grows rapidly. The country's growth episode after the lost decade of the 1990s occurred in the 2000s, when reforms were pursued in the first decade of democratic rule, before the balance of power in the political settlement became highly unstable from around the year 2010. Within this decade, growth averaged around 7% per annum, driven largely by non-oil sectors, such as finance, information and communications technology, entertainment, trade, and other industries where easy fix reforms were implemented. Due to this decade-long non-oil growth, since around the year 2003, the oil sector in Nigeria now contributes just under 10% of GDP. However, the oil sector still accounts for around 90% of export earnings and more than 50% of government revenue, which is where the real problem lies. We saw a similar dynamic in the 1960s and the 1970s, where a stable political settlement was accompanied by rapid growth of around 6 to 7% per annum, until the political settlement collapsed with the civil war and violent military coups, and consequently, growth itself collapsed. We need a more accurate diagnosis of the development challenges of resource-rich countries. The challenge of achieving economic diversification in a country like Nigeria is not rooted in some inherent characteristics such as a resource curse or a backward neo-patrimonial culture. It is in fact resulting from a highly unstable political configuration that makes deep-rooted structural reforms on agriculture, on land reforms, downstream oil deregulation, etc. nearly impossible. Therefore, we as scholars, as analysts, need to update our mental models for how we think about resource-rich countries in Africa, especially now that we are entering a new commodity supercycle globally. An analytical framework that gives us a vital insight into the political process of economic development confirms what we have always instinctively known, that no country is cursed by its natural resources or culturally adverse to development. Megatrends such as digitalization, climate change, and commodity shocks can open or close vital reform windows. This book's key messages have important implications for Nigeria's ability to position its economy for a post-oil future in an era of climate change. The book also has implications for other oil-rich countries as they navigate the transition to a low-carbon future. Very importantly, I hope the book helps provide alternative ways of thinking through the development and governance challenges that low and middle income economies around the world, especially in Africa, face.